And so hopefully,
I can, because then I can't move it as easily.
good evening, everyone. Welcome to Planning Board. Having all our members here, we'll call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. Any public comment? Do we have any hands raised for public comment? Any comment from the board?
Woohoo! It's nice to meet with you all in person.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure that it's public comment, but I think it might come under committee reports, but I find myself in a situation where I just cannot participate in the Economic Development Committee, so I'll be looking for someone to take that role. I'm just finding myself way overextended.
Well, we certainly appreciate the effort, and we will seek to fill the vacancy.
Okay.
We can, could we get a formal resignation from that? from you?
Absolutely.
And then we'll post it. And
Okay.
Well, it's a board
It's a-
member.
it's a-
So it's one of,
it's a-
it's one of you
I don't
five.
think you've got your
Okay.
Yeah,
mics
it's a
All
on,
right.
planning board member.
because
Okay.
I see picture but no sound.
What's that?
Someone has no sound? Oh, I wonder if
Can you hear us now?
Yep.
Okay. Excellent.
I think Greg has his hand up now. Nope, he lowered it.
Okay. Please bear with us while we sort through Zoom and hybrid in-person technology. Our first appointment is an A&R plan for Fire Road 16. And
Good evening.
good evening.
My name is Peter Knox, and I'm here on behalf of J&A Realty Trust, who happens to be the petitioner for this particular A&R plan. J&A owns a large parcel of vacant land, it's 13-plus acres, on 238 Fire Road 16 here in Lunenburg. They desire to transfer to a Margaret and Kevin Kidder, who also own property adjacent to my client's land, a small parcel of land. I think you have it in front of you. It is a parcel A on the plan as submitted, and it constitutes 3,168 square feet. I think what we're doing, this seems fairly straightforward to me. We're not taking or affecting any of the frontage on Fire Road 16. We're not creating or enlarging a non-conforming use. The transfer is simply to provide the Kidders with some assurances that what they have been using for quite a while now, they will continue to use and own. And aside from that, I don't know of any other issues that would be of concern to the board, but I'm open to questions.
So the shed that's described on the plan is their shed,
It's their
which
shed,
is currently on your client's property.
correct?
So this division resolves that issue.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any idea what the size of the shed is?
You know, that I could guess it, because I've been out there a lot.
Okay,
I'm gonna guess it's probably about 12 by 12. It's not that big a shed,
okay.
but it's very important to them because it's a small camp that they have, and they store a lot of their
Stuff there.
stuff there that they need.
So my understanding is that
the house that's getting this additional parcel is actually the one that plows the entire fire road. They park their plow truck there. And I would also just mention, I'm not sure if Tanner was with us when this came before us for the, what was it?
This was
Access?
it was a one-lot A and R,
I know this is now, but before it was for vital access.
because
Years
it was done through a one-lot A and R. By them filing the A and R plan, the board determined there was vital practicable access for
One house.
the lot at 238 for a
the-
single home.
Okay, I just wanted to
Yep.
remind everybody that, but this is good. I don't see any issues.
Any other questions?
I do have a question. And I'm sure there's just something here I don't understand reading the plots, but the existing house at 272, never mind, I answered my own question, lovely. Okay, very good. I misunderstood which way the plot was going.
Yep. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion.
I would make a motion to approve the A&R plan for Fire Road 16.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you very, very much. Stay as cool as you can.
Now, so you guys don't have to come in.
Oh, excellent.
Again.
If you want to wait, Attorney Knox, I can give you the plan.
It's a good thought.
There you go. Our next appointment is for 830 Massachusetts Avenue. And just before we start, I will disclose that I am an abutter to this property, but have no financial interest in it, and so I will participate. Go ahead.
Happy to start. Okay, thanks, everybody. Greg Roy with Dolson Roy. It's good to see all of you folks face to face, finally. So I'm here tonight for an A&R plan at 830 Mass Ave. We're representing Corinne Scouten. The parcel is just under 8 acres, 7 3/4 acres. There's just over 102 feet of frontage in the limited business district, which is the frontage. The rear portion of the site is in the residential A district. So Corinne is interested in splitting off a piece of property for one of her children for a house in the back of the property. And so we're showing a parcel that would be subdivided, which would be a reduced frontage lot. So we have held to the limited business in Lunenburg is a little bit undefined in the bylaw, so we've held all of the offsets and area requirements in the residential A district, which I think you can see on our table on the plan. There are wetlands in the back of the property, so we do have the prerequisite required upland percentage, as well as the required 200% area requirement for the reduced frontage lots. I think that's all for my comments. I'm happy to answer any questions. There's also a separate plan that had the topographic details on it. I think it should be in your packet.
You don't have that plan, do you have that plan?
I don't.
Should be at the back
Oh,
end.
it's
There
on the
should be 2 plans in your,
Yeah, got it.
Oh, I was looking at it.
So this is almost immediately across the street from Conrad's, if you can picture that. White house, driveway, as you're facing the house, the driveway's to the right, and there's a garage that's down in the back of the property. So the new lot would be just to the left of the house. You can picture it.
And I think there's already an existing curb cut there, right?
There is. I think it kind of peters out as you go to the street, Tanner, but you'd probably know, you'd probably know that better than I do. Yeah, yeah.
5 times a day.
But there is a pretty good cart path going back there that would be utilized for the driveway, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, what is the minimum width through the building for the existing home? I don't believe it conforms as it is.
Right. It is pre-existing non-conforming relative to that. I know that you've had more discussions with this, Adam, than I have, because you've been working, I think, with Seth over the past few months on this. But from what I understand, we do not make it any more non-conforming relative to that. Is there in limited business, is
I
there?
don't believe there's no defined width through a building in limited.
Limited business, right.
The dimensional section doesn't speak to that. And I didn't have any discussions with Seth about width through the building. He may have talked to Case about that.
So,
Yeah, so the existing house is within the limited business, and there's no
Right.
defined width through that.
and you mentioned that
section.
there's no defined really lot size, and I guess I'd just like clarification on that, Adam. Is there no requirements for lot size in limited business?
There is nothing in the bylaw. I know that in the past, Case has told people to stick with 1 acre because that's our minimum lot width in the Residence A as well as the commercial district. So it would make sense that that seems to be our minimum lot size that the town has adopted across the board.
So that might be something we want to put on a future
It
agenda?
is something that we should probably.
Yeah, you should.
Honestly, I think all of section 5.1 and 5.2 could probably
I've-
be revisited at some point.
I've called Adam on multiple occasions. Can you I just want to be sure that there's no place in the bylaw where limited business, yeah. So, there's no side yard setback in limited business either. But we held the 15-foot per RA guidelines for the existing house, so.
So have you checked with the building official on the width through the building? Because I know I only know this because when I went to subdivide my lot, I couldn't make the lot any more non-conforming.
Yeah. I don't believe so. I'm filling in for Seth tonight. I do apologize for that. I haven't been working directly on this, but I don't believe that Seth has reached out relative to that, to the building official.
Adam, have you talked with the building
You
official?
know, I have not had a specific discussion with him about that. I know that I've talked with Seth and I've talked with
Corinne.
Ms. Scouten, several times about the property and the options that she would have and some of the challenges that might come from subdividing it.
So I don't have a problem with this plan, however, I'm concerned about signing it or approving it without input from the building official, because we're taking, what is the current lot, 112 feet of frontage, I think?
102.
102.
Sorry,
Just-
102 feet of frontage.
Yeah.
And we're taking off 51 feet. I'd like to know from the building official that he doesn't have an issue with that before we approve the A&R.
Well, at the point where the house sits, it would be less than that because you have 51 feet of frontage, but then it tapers
What, oh,
as it enters the house area.
you mean the
Well,
width
no,
of
it's
the
actually
new?
wider at the house area
Yeah,
because the
it's-
width through the
Yeah.
lot would be sideline to sideline.
Yeah, it's sideline to
Right.
sideline, so we're
Right.
taking off 51 feet.
No, you're
But
you're
only
not.
at the street.
Only, yeah.
Only at the street. I
See
guess
how
I'm not
it tapers in?
There's a delta
Yep.
to the right of the proposed.
There's a long neck that's
If it
thinner,
came-
nominally 25 feet. So we go 50 feet, and then we come down to
So what
25.
is this solid line here that runs
That's
all
the
the way
proposed
down?
lot line.
That's what yeah,
Yeah.
that's my question, is so we're making the width of the lot much narrower.
Yeah, so if there were a minimum lot width required in the limited business district, we would have to comply with that, but there isn't one, so it's hard, it's a little bit one of those
And I
gray areas.
completely
Yeah.
understand where you're coming from, and I would tend to agree with you, but I don't want to be in a situation where we approve an A&R plan and then the building and zoning official says, no,
Yeah.
you can't do that,
Yeah.
because we've already approved it.
Yeah,
So I'd prefer to have his comments on this A&R plan before we take action.
And not only that, I mean, for future discussions, lot width, I think should be for a residential building, regardless of zone. I don't know where it's defined in
It's defined in the,
Res A, Res B, and outlying.
no, it's defined by zone in section 5.1.
Oh, in our new chart.
Nope, in the chart that existed in 5.1.
Yeah, it's in the,
It's
Yeah.
in the,
not-
the minimum lot requirement chart,
and it's there for Res A and Res B.
but it's also there for
Outlying?
outlying retail, commercial, office park, industrial.
Everything but limited
Everything
business.
but
Well,
limited.
there's nothing for limited business in the chart. So when they created limited business, they never went back and modified this section
Yeah.
So,
for whatever reason.
Again, I would urge us to look at that definition and say for residential uses in any zone.
So I personally, I don't have a problem with the plan, but I'm not comfortable signing it without feedback from the zoning official.
I would agree. I would agree because it was one of those gray areas, and I would really not like to set precedent on something that's kind of gray.
Well, I would have more of an issue with it if the existing house had the 175 feet. I guess the thing I'm tripping over is it's non-conforming as it is, and yes, it's becoming more non-conforming, but it's not, where there isn't a specified lot width in that district, it's a hard thing to nail down. But I guess so you don't know what the feedback has been from Mr. Burlingame on that issue?
I don't, Seth, I believe, said that he has not had a conversation with him on it.
Okay. But in all other regards, I think it looks all right. Is there any other concerns anybody has?
This meeting is being recorded.
It's almost like,
I have no other concerns.
I don't either.
We have a member of the public with their hand up. I don't know if you want to entertain comment or not. It's not a public hearing, so,
Yeah, certainly.
but, Ms. Adams?
I just wanted to say, is the new lot that's being created conforming? Because it's in the residential district.
Yes.
Yes.
the
Yes.
lot is con-
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so at least you've only got a question on one half of what's going on.
Right.
and I will note too that, well, I don't know that it, I mean, like I said, if there was a lot width which was defined by width through the building for limited business, we would have to comply with it. But there isn't. And I do note that there is within the residentially zoned portion of the existing house lot in the back of the property, there is certainly enough lot width. You see what I'm saying? So as you go in the back, there's areas where you can prove that you have a 170-foot lot width for a potential house lot, should it, the intention is not to tear the building down. The intention is to keep the building, but, so I understand what you're saying. I mean, it's difficult because the bylaw is silent. I mean, typically when the bylaw is silent, it means there's no,
But the zoning
Fine.
official has the ultimate
Yeah, I
decision
understand.
on to
No, I
So
understand.
I just would like for him to say he doesn't have a problem with it, and then I would have no problem signing it and approving it. But since he hasn't been consulted yet, again, I don't want to be in a situation where we approve an A and R and then he tells us that it's not a buildable lot, that we've created
Yeah, I
a
understand,
problem.
yeah.
So,
And the 15.2 feet that's shown, I'm assuming the side yard with offset is 15 feet.
well, there isn't any in limited business, again.
okay.
But we held the RA.
Okay.
We just,
All right.
we just, we didn't want to, we had the room to do it, so we held that.
Okay.
All right, and that's fine, I understand. So we'll,
12th July, and I'll follow up with Case. He's not
12th
back
July.
until the 6th.
oh, you'll follow up a case, okay.
I would suggest you do too, but I will
Yeah, okay.
as well.
All right, we'll do that. Yeah, 12th of July, okay. All right, well, happy 4th, everybody. And again, it's good to see you. Thank you
Good
for your
seeing you
time.
in person.
Yeah, you too.
Okay, our next appointment is for 260 Falula Street, or Road, rather.
I had no idea.
It's off behind
Behind Summer Street.
Crawford Street in Fitchburg.
Bill Hannigan
So
here
it's,
representing the applicant.
It touches the rail yard, the MBTA yard.
Okay,
Yeah, in the back.
We don't have any frontage or anything in this area.
okay.
Adam, do you need me to present?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Hannigan.
Do you need me to present anything, or?
Well,
Yes,
that-
if you
yeah,
don't
that's
mind,
usually how it
that'd be
goes.
Excellent. You've disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, well, they all have a plan.
Oh, excellent, okay. So I'll look at my side then. So this is at the old Turnkey Lumber site, which we came in front of the board for a site plan review, which ended up being viewed as being, we're not really making any changes, so that was fine. But there were encroachments onto the land of Keating from the prior owner. And
on.
what we've done
Wait a
is
minute.
we've
This
negotiated-
We're on Falula Road.
Oh, you're on that one?
Yep.
Yep.
It's over, which also involves an encroachment. So this one is both in Fitchburg and Leominster. I'm sorry, Fitchburg and Lunenburg. And the business is Tango Construction. The prior business started an encroachment onto the City of Fitchburg Redevelopment Authority's land. And we've gone through conservation to basically remedy the work that was done on that. And part of the ability to remedy that is we need to own the land. So we're basically exchanging, not direct exchange, but parcel B will be annexed to and conveyed to the city of, or the Fitchburg redevelopment land, which is shown as parcel C. And parcel A will be conveyed to next to land of 134 Crawford Street to create a single lot as well. So the only frontage we're changing over is to give the city of Fitchburg or the Fitchburg Redevelopment Authority additional frontage on Crawford Street of 120 feet plus. I think they have about 70 or 80 feet now. And then if they decide that they want to develop that piece, they would have to go back through the planning board to do that work. The Crawford Street work for 134 involves remediation, basically, of areas against Baker Brook, along with some grading that is shown in the filings that we've done with the Conservation Commission. Those were approved last year. And it's just taken a little while with COVID to get all the parties together to agree on the purchase of the parcel A and conveyance. So that doesn't involve any buildable area relative to new lots. It's just really the parcels that are being created to be swapped around, and that would then allow the people on Tango Construction to remedy the disturbances that they did with the Conservation Commission.
Okay, and so just to be clear, parcel B is not in Lunenburg.
Parcel B is not in Lunenburg. That's
Okay.
why we also have to get the Pittsburgh Planning Board to sign off on this as well.
Okay, so the only thing we're really discussing is parcel A, which is 3.61 acres that's being taken away from parcel C, both of which are in Lunenburg.
Correct.
And there's no street frontage involved because
Correct.
the town line doesn't go that far, it doesn't go to Crawford Street, so.
Correct.
Any members of the board have questions? Need any clarification on?
I'm just entirely confused about where Falula Street is in Lunenburg. I don't see it at all.
Yeah, so Falula Street is where the frontage is for this piece. It's apparently listed as Falula Street, which is to the north of the site. If you look at the locust map, I'm not even sure whether the piece ends up having frontage on Falula Street, but that's the address of the property according to the assessment. records,
Doesn't look like it does.
okay?
Yeah.
All right. So it's like a rear lot kind of thing.
Yep.
But I,
Could you find it in the assessor's record?
well, it's listed as Falula,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
but, yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mrs. Bertram.
I don't have any questions, and I would make a motion to approve the A&R plan for 260 Falula Road.
Is there a second?
I would second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Aye.
Aye. You are all set with that one, Mr. Hannigan. Now moving on to Old Shirley Road.
Okay. So for the record, Bill Hannigan with Hannigan Engineering. The property at 305 Lumberson Shirley Road we were in front of the board for a site plan review last year sometime, or earlier, maybe earlier this year. It was last year, but
Yeah.
Can you
that was the
speak up a
one-
little bit?
Yeah, we
Sure.
can't hear you.
Sure. The turnkey lumber site had a previous site plan that the building was built by, and there was some question about whether the change, excuse me, the change in use would require a new site plan. We came in front of the board, and that change was deemed not to be necessary. But the previous owner, it's now Paul Foley is actually the receiver for the previous owner through the bank. And so my client, TVC Construction, is trying to buy the property. And then they're also now going to buy pieces of land, parcel A and parcel B as shown in the plan, which are now formerly of Paul Keating or Keating heirs. So the intention is there's a very large encroachment to the north of the building at the rear of the site, which extends probably about halfway into parcel A. So the intention is for Keating to sell the pieces to GVC Construction so that they don't have encroachments anymore, essentially.
Okay, so this is another situation where there's no frontage involved. It's,
Right.
Well,
And the only reason why there's parcel A and parcel B is that there's a deed line that separates the two from a title perspective. So, but it is the same owner.
so, through the chair,
yes.
we recently did waive the site plan review, I believe, in lieu of their financing and whatnot, and we got an agreement through that to work with the DPW on the site distance. That is not going to change, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, they're just adding land, and if you,
Okay.
oh, I didn't,
It did sound like I don't know, it sounded, I heard something about change of use. Maybe it was just a discussion about the previous time they were here.
I think that's, he was describing the history of the property briefly as how I understood it.
Very good.
And if you
Yep.
see on the screen, the large building that my cursor is on now is
The
what
encroachment.
is not the encroachment, is the large building on the plan in front of you near the property line.
The
I would
existing
expect the
front.
encroachment is all of this disturbance,
Oh,
Right.
and it looks like regrinds or gravel or something to that effect into the adjoining lot. In addition, there's, I believe, some encroachment on this side. Again, regrinds, gravel, cleared area and travel.
Yeah, so the change in use I was referring to was the original owner was Turnkey Lumber, and now the people who are buying it, they own construction. So that was why we came in front of the board. So they haven't purchased the property yet because they want to get this A&R plan taken care of so they can do it all at once for the financing.
Didn't we waive site plan review
Yes.
because they were in a crunch to buy the property?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, it's part of the understanding.
So now they've held off to get this A&R through.
Well, there really isn't any hindsight in that process. If you waive it, you've waived it, right?
Yep.
So,
Okay.
We need to be more careful in the future on that, I
Yes, we
think.
do. So Turnkey Lumber, was that the Alpha Omega?
That was,
Omega applicant?
it used to be Frost Auto Parts.
Before, right, so.
that was, it was Force Corp was my understanding. That,
Force Corp? I thought
that
it
was
was
back in 2013, 2014, prior to my employment here.
Okay, okay. There was,
Because they were operating when I got here.
maybe Alpha was the applicant, there was the
Maybe.
engineer or something, okay.
Any other questions relative to this A&R?
I don't have any questions on the A&R, but I'm extremely disappointed that we waived site plan review because
Yeah,
of a
me too.
purchase, and now we find that the purchase hasn't moved forward because they were awaiting an A&R.
Yep, very unhappy.
I'll entertain a motion relative to the A&R.
I would move that we approve the A&R for Old Shirley Road, Leominster Shirley Road.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 You only need 3.
So are you
Aye.
opposed?
I am opposed for, other than the A&R process, but
And I for myself, Marjorie. All
So
right.
I can bring this back to my client and talk to him about that particular matter. I think, I wasn't at the meeting when that happened, so I don't know the particulars of what was said and of what the reasoning was behind it. But if there's a question about what we're doing on the property, I think that we should take care of that with respect to making sure the board's satisfied. So I will talk to my client about maybe having another meeting with the board, just once he finalizes what he's going to do on the property, just so that you can look at it and make sure that we're all on the same page. I don't think there's a problem with that.
Well, we certainly appreciate that, Mr.
Thank you.
Hannigan, and the key issue that the board had, as I recall, was the sight line as you approach Leominster Shirley Road, because there is a curve and change in elevation there, and so access to and from that lot has been problematic, and that was the primary concern. So,
All right, so Adam, do you want to see if we can put together a meeting with DPW so we can talk about that? It sounds
I can
like
certainly put a
that was
meeting
kind of
together. The agreement was your client after the waiver would speak with them specifically about the being at the bottom of the curve, the
Yep.
horizontal curve here, or the vertical curve there with the horizontal curve coming in.
Yeah.
And the combination of Fort Pond here and people coming in this direction. I'll reach out to the DPW director and see what his availability is after the holiday.
That sounds fine. Yeah, we want to make sure that you guys are satisfied, obviously.
thank you.
Thank you.
But thank you for your time.
All right. Moving on to the first of 2 public hearings, 101 Pleasant Street, which is continued from April 26th. And I believe everybody should have updated plans, and we just received the engineer's review from Graves this afternoon, I believe.
yeah, 3 o'clock. Yep, I actually looked at it.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, David Plunkett, represent the applicant, Mass Pleasant LLC. Danny Gardner, one of the principals from the group, is here. Also, Paul Grazowicz from Graz Engineering is here, who will address the technical aspects of the proposal. Mr. Chairman, this has changed from the last meeting, taken into account comments during the last hearing. The key conditions have changed. It's reduced from 6 lots to 4 lots. The plan has been re-engineered so that there will be no waivers requested. The plan is still to have this as a private road with a homeowners association, so it'll be maintained by the lot owners rather than having the town maintain the new roadway. The other issue that, to make you aware, is that Conservation Commission has issued an order of conditions on the premises, and that order of conditions was recorded just today at the Registry of Deeds. So Conservation has issued the order of conditions and it's been recorded. At this time, turn it over to Mr. Grazowicz to address the engineering aspects of the submittal.
Have you received Mr. Walsh's comments?
That's from Graves Engineering?
Yes.
Yes, it just came in today.
Okay.
So, obviously, that most of those are technical in aspect that Mr. Grazowicz will address.
Okay.
I think that, primarily all the issues have been pretty well addressed. There are some items that, Paul will address when he speaks to the board. Again, this just came in today, so, have to understand from our perspective as well as your perspective, that short order of notice and ability to respond. So I'll defer to Mr. Grazowicz at this time. Thank you.
Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening. As was stated, we shortened the road up to 650 per your regulations. We had 6 lots before. We got it down to 5, but when we were redoing the stormwater hydrology, we just ran out of real estate with the wetland setbacks, et cetera. So we had to drop down to 4 lots, which would be, they'll all be duplexes, 8 units total. One thing that I do want to make a correction of, we have not received an order of conditions yet. We've, submitted to conservation, I don't know, a couple months ago, and I think they were waiting to see the, the new plans, which we sent to them
Okay.
back in early June. But I think we wanted to get Jeff Walsh's comments and, see where we were at with that. So we still yet have to receive conservation approval.
Okay.
I'm going through the all of the items on here. Basically, pretty much you'll see everything's been addressed. There are a couple of hydrology questions that we have to take another look at, and this the NPDES Phase 2 stuff, which is actually, quite honestly, it's some of those requirements are new to me, so we got to see, like phosphorus removal, we got to figure out how we're going to do that. But other than that, I think you'll agree in looking at the letter that everything else we've taken care of.
Well, I think that, Mr. Chair, if I might,
Go right ahead.
my concern in all of the developments that we look at are stormwater. And much of the ongoing issues that Mr. Walsh points out in his letter have to do with drainage calcs. Right. So, he talks about catch basins CB1 and CB2 as 8-inch diameter outlet pipes, and he's saying their capacities are questionable. And I don't know if you received a copy of the correspondence from the DPW director, but he will not accept an 8-inch outlet pipe.
Okay, no, we did not receive those.
Okay.
So, yeah, it'd be great to have those.
Okay.
I had hoped when we originally submitted this revision back in June 10th or whatever, that, if we get our comments in a couple of weeks, maybe we could, wrap it up. But, obviously there's a few dangling things here that,
Yeah.
we just have to take care of.
Yeah, so the DPW director he wants a minimum 12-inch pipe.
Yep.
And he's, again, talks about on the drainage pipes at catch basins near the project entrance. He's concerned that the pipe cover has to be reevaluated. So he's concerned about that. The hydrology computations were based on one-day data, but it has to be a 24-hour period data. So there's, and specifically, and my biggest concern is the TSS removal. TSS calcs that you provided vary between 25% and 89%, and you have to have at least 90% TSS removal. So there are some, in my opinion, some significant outstanding issues. As you mentioned, the phosphorus removal has to be addressed. And you just received the DPW director's letter, but he's also concerned about language in some type of covenant regarding the private ownership of the retaining walls and appurtenant features. So we'll have to work on that, Adam. I'm assuming you'll consult with him about language that he would like to see incorporated.
And, if we're getting to the point where the board is ready to approve this, the board has indicated that that's something they would also like to see, some mechanism for maintaining the road
Right.
and drainage structures, theoretically in perpetuity, but at least between the time of the road construction beginning and any potential approach to town meeting. And the applicant has indicated it's going to be a private road. So in that instance, one would think that he would begin drafting documents and would be submitting those as part of the final review for approval, because if you're offering it as a private road, we would expect that you would also be providing a mechanism for maintenance of the road, the appurtenant structures, the walls specifically, and then all the stormwater.
Sure.
Right, the homeowners association documents.
Correct, and-
Essentially is what we're going to need. So I'm not at a point where I'm ready to approve this. I think there are too many outstanding issues with stormwater, and also, as you just mentioned, I think we need to see the homeowners association documentation to ensure that this system will continue to be maintained, not only the stormwater system, but the retaining walls.
If I may.
Go ahead.
I'd like to question the ability of the DPW director to require a 12-inch pipe. I mean, if in fact the rational method is able to be utilized to prove that 8-inch diameter pipe is adequate for the flows, is there any documentation that Lunenburg currently has for the DPW director to make a statement like that?
I would have to look further into that. What I would also say is if the road is going to remain private, that would theoretically not be an issue. But
Well, I disagree with that, but okay.
well, I mean, if the road's going to remain private, his desire for a 12-inch pipe, if it meets requirements, or if there's a requirement for a town road, would be different than a private driveway or road.
Okay, but I think that's
But
beyond.
I would, again, I would have to look and see what he has within the DPW for either procedures or requirements.
I mean, it is fairly industry standard, but to alleviate the cover, he reduced the pipe size, and now he's caught in a catch-22. So I just wanted to question that. And again, if the rational method proves that an 8-inch pipe will not facilitate the required storm, then it doesn't matter if it's private or public. I don't think it would be something the planning board will want to approve anyway.
Correct, but if the rational method supports it, there may be something in the bylaws or the regulations within the DPW that allows him to dictate a 12-inch pipe size regardless of its ability to handle flow.
Sure.
The DPW is also questioning if are guardrails or other types of barriers warranted on top of the retaining walls. What's the height of the retaining walls?
I'd have to go back and check. It was right around 4 feet. If it's over 4 feet, we need to have, fencing
So
per building
we
code.
want to check that as well.
Yep.
I mean, the board could also say if it's right around 4 feet that as a condition you're going to require it because, it's designed at 3 feet, 9 inches. And then
right.
they get out there and someone gets crazy with the stone and it's 4 feet, and a half inch, and there's no guardrails shown, they're not going to put them in.
Yeah, we'll double check that.
So, Adam, you gave,
I gave him my copy, yeah.
okay, so you have the comments from DPW?
No, I don't. If
I
could-
just handed them to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what you just got. And then, do you have the latest comments from Graves?
Yes.
Okay. Do any members of the board have any issues that aren't covered on those two documents? I'm working under the assumption that he has that to-do list already, so the only issue I have that comes to mind is I know we had some concerns about the entrance to the property and the radius of that corner.
Yeah, we shifted the road over to, so we could get the granite curbing and get away from that driveway.
Okay. So you've been able to do that, assuming that conservation doesn't have an issue with the location of the road?
Yeah, it's still, we still kept our drainage discharge out of the, so it worked out.
Okay. I just want to try to send you back with a complete list of things
Right.
that you can sort through, and that way when you come back, it's a straightforward process, hopefully. Mr. Walsh, do you have any comments for us relative to this project that aren't in the letter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Jeff Walsh with Graves Engineering, working for the Planning Board. I have no additional information other than what's in the letter. I think the points were very well summarized this evening by others. I wanted to speak to a couple of things that were discussed by the board just a few minutes ago. Height of the wall, as you were driving in, the wall on the right would be about a 4-foot exposed height. The wall on the left would be about a 5-foot exposed height. I was wrestling with whether or not to comment about the guardrails, but nevertheless, the DPW director did, so I'd rather than be redundant. My very last comment does point out the DPW director's comments, and my preference would be to see a guardrail there, quite frankly. There's a little bit of a horizontal curve, if I remember right. If there was, it's not much one. No sidewalks, but nevertheless, it would be prudent to have a guardrail there. Mr. Allison brought up if there's a requirement about a minimum diameter 12-inch drainage pipe in town. The closest I got in Section 5 of the subdivision rules and regs under subdrains, it calls for a minimum diameter of a 12-inch pipe for a subdrain, which I'm scratching my head on that, and I'm wondering if that wasn't, the discussion of subdrain wasn't years ago mixed in with the fact that maybe a minimum pipe diameter for any drainage needs to be 12-inch. Normally, I see in other communities, the minimum drainage pipe diameter would be 12-inch, but subdrains usually run about 6-inch diameter. So I was wrestling with, is that a requirement? And because the sentence or the section starts out about subdrains, I didn't feel comfortable tying that to the typical drainage pipe, but that's the only reference I'm aware of in the town regulations. Other than that, as we all know, the new section on stormwater, the revised section on stormwater, has been a learning curve for all of us. I'm sure the board, myself, I'm seeing the exact language in other communities. So obviously the MS4 program has driven this, and at least there are, in the section, there's different ways that engineers can present to the board how they achieve that 90% TSS removal or 60% total phosphorus removal. One of those requirements is retaining and infiltrating the 1 inch of runoff from the impervious area. That's, to me, I look at it, wow, if I've got a sand and gravel site, I can make that no problem. The Tilly sites I'm more challenged with, but nevertheless, that's one way to do it, and there are the other methods that the regulations speak to, and those are the same regulations, again, I see in other communities, so I think it came from a more generalized MS4 document somewhere that was provided to the towns as the MS4 program pushed it onto the towns. But We're getting there. Lastly, I apologize for the delay in getting this letter out. Quite frankly, I've been backlogged for quite a few weeks, and I'm catching up, even with long hours, and I wanted to make sure the letter got out before the meeting. I was really gunning for last Thursday, but I had a few interruptions last week that chewed up a half a day here and a half a day there. And I apologize for it getting on the street, even on the day, even if, let alone in the afternoon of a day of a meeting. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Still very much appreciated.
Absolutely. I would just comment that, given Mr. Walsh's information about the height of the retaining wall, I would want to see guardrails, so if you could include that on the plan.
Well, and I think to meet building code, they'll need a fence. Any wall over 4 feet.
Yeah, and the guardrail may work on the wall. I don't know about the chain link fence. They would
Yeah,
want to
they
check
might
on
need
that.
both.
And if they're 4-foot walls holding back uncontained fill, they're going to need a building permit anyway.
Yep. So, any other?
I would also mention that there are wood guide rails and there are steel guardrails,
Just so we're all clear.
just so we're all clear. Now, I don't think
I
that,
don't- I don't know which one we need. Do we need to be guided or guarded?
I would suggest that we needed to be guided.
Okay.
I would suggest we needed to be guarded, so.
Okay.
Well, I think the difference being if one were to go over the edge on a 4-foot, it's going to be
Oh, correct.
less dangerous than
Yeah.
if it were a 30 or 40-foot drop. And I think that can sometimes be the difference between whether you require a guardrail or.
I don't know, if I've got my grandkids in the car and I go over a 4-foot drop from a 4-foot height, I want to be guarded.
Well,
Probably stay on the road.
Well,
Well, I will stay on the road,
we'll
but
let
not
the
everybody
engineers work
does.
that one out. Where are we at with the clock on this particular project?
this
And-
just started.
Any?
I had
comments?
sent it out. No, and because the clock was frozen since, what date was this signed? The 17th was when it was recorded with the town clerk.
Okay.
So we haven't lost any time over that. I'm waiting for the,
I
file
believe
to
we
open
were
up.
at 81 days.
yeah, I was gonna say, it's somewhere in the high 70s, low 80s.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. It is 81.
Yeah, it's 81.
81 days. All right. Any comments from the public? Does anybody have their hands up?
No. Oh, Mr. Bittner.
Mr. Bittner, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Hello, everyone. Greg Bittner, 32 Sandy Cove Road, formerly at 129 Pleasant Street. I was just wondering if you guys were going to require any additional documents in regards to like snow storage, if that would affect any of the drainage, and then architectural renderings of the buildings. I know it's a subdivision, but having that information might be helpful to the neighbors who have to look at this every day. And then again, if there's any way we can secure bonds to make sure that the work is completed. Again, with the history of the applicant, the CONSCOM and fines and litigation, I think that needs to be taken into consideration. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Adams has her hand up.
And Miss Adams.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I was a resident of Lunenburg at 39 Pleasant Street, where family members still reside. I did submit a comment letter to the Conservation Commission, which I also sent a courtesy copy to the Land Use Director, Mr. Burney, and I believe I also sent it to the applicant's engineer. It was dated June 14th, and it focused primarily on the conservation aspects of the property. So I won't go into that in detail, other than it talks a lot about increased protection for the significant wetland areas, and using a clerk of the works that can supervise the replication of the wetlands, and the amount of detail that was requested by the Conservation Commission. I would say one other thing in connection to some of the comments that have come from your Department of Public Works Director and the comments that have been made by the board members in previous hearings. Regardless of whether you say that it's a road with a long driveway or a driveway that was a road by another name, it's an awful lot of pavement. And the idea to date has been that the homeowners association will maintain that infrastructure. And never mind the guardrail or guide rail, the catch basins, etc. It's primarily focused on whether the street will become something that by default the town has to maintain. Obviously, number one, the street has to meet the requirements for a public way in Lunenburg, and that would be the first question. Barring that, I was wondering whether it would make sense in this case, since that seems to be one of the sticking points for the planning board, that the homeowners association, or how can I put it, that part of the sale price of the houses, of the units, include the beginning of an escrow account for the homeowners association in recognition that you have 4 units. I think they're duplexes, so you have 8 residences. That money would become part of seed funding for an escrow account to start the homeowners association off with some money in their kitty to continue to maintain the road. Snow plowing, that's one thing, but I'm thinking more of maintaining the physical infrastructure, i.e. the guardrails, the walls, the pavement structure and subbase, etc. I know from experience that this is a sticking point because when I worked for the Cape Cod Commission, we also reviewed subdivisions, and that was a concern for the towns that they would articulate to the organization that I was staffed to the same thing. It's a long road, it's only got X units. Is there going to be sufficient funds for the homeowner association to maintain the integrity of the road, or is it ultimately going to fall onto the town by default, which we don't want, quoting it, the towns. If we're going to get it, we want it already built to our road standards, because then we'll have an easier time maintaining it if it comes to us either by a friendly taking and making it a public way, or by default that the homeowners association fizzles in or says it becomes a safety hazard for our public safety equipment to get down, so it then falls back on us by default. I guess what I'm trying to say to wrap this up is there a way for us to be, or I should say the board, to be a little bit more proactive in partnership with the applicant to find a way to head this potential issue off before it even starts? If starting an escrow fund as part of the sale price isn't viable, then I would say that, and I hate to do this, there has to be some language that the town sees that's ironclad in terms of the owner walking into this with their eyes wide open, knowing that they and the rest of the homeowners on this way have the duty to maintain it. Because, as I said, one was, oh, we don't have any money, you're going to have to do it, town. And on the flip side, when I worked on other projects, after the fact, the residents would say, how come the road's in such bad shape? Why doesn't the town pave it and fix it? And the town, and then us, as the Cape Cod Commission, and when I worked in Watertown, would have to say, we're sorry, it's a private road. You owe the $10,000 or $15,000 it takes to bring it back up to being passable. And if you want the town to take the responsibility for it, you're going to have to build in the infrastructure, which means drainage, et cetera, and width or whatever. So I don't know if that's something that's within your ability or that's something that's within what you might want to consider or have a dialogue with the applicant that this issue can hopefully be put to rest or lessened in terms of some of the things that are of a concern to the board, but that's a potential suggestion.
Thank you. That's certainly an issue that we have discussed, and unfortunately, we're a little bit limited on how much we can do through the site plan approval, but it's certainly on our radar. So, thank you. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, could I just ask a question?
Sure.
The homeowners association is now a fairly common instrument among other towns, municipalities. So I have a format that I've used for a number of communities. My question would be, do you have a format that is a preferred format, or
We don't
do you
currently
want just
have
a
one.
submittal
I would
to-
suggest you submit yours,
Okay.
and we would submit it to council for review.
Okay, and because I think that will address a number of the issues that were just raised, because they're fairly common issues that are requested be addressed by the other municipalities that are looking towards reducing their responsibility for maintenance and upkeep of new developments through the private way. And then just one last thing, an apology about the comment on the order of conditions. I had received a number of documents all late this afternoon. I saw order of conditions. I said, oh, that's good. And then when Paul got up there and I'm looking, I said, oh, that isn't good. So I apologize for that. There was no intent to, there was an order of conditions recorded today, but it wasn't for this project. So my apologies on that. Thank you.
No worries at all. Before you go, we will need to make a motion to continue.
Yeah.
And what is a good timeline for the applicant?
Yes, the 12th is the next meeting, you said?
Yes,
Is
so it'd
that
be
good?
July 12th or July 26th. Just keeping in mind, we have a holiday between now and the 12th.
I was gonna say, I would need all of your documents by July 6th at 4 o'clock.
By July 5th,
6th,
6th?
a week from tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a shot.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to continue.
Mr. Chair, I would motion that we continue this hearing to July 12th
Second?
At 6:30.
at 6:30.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent.
I'll get the hang of it someday.
Our next public hearing is for 711 Massachusetts Avenue, which was continued from May 10th.
Guys in the sound.
We're just going to take a break for 1 minute.
People hear the TV, okay? So I only hear out of one ear, so I have no idea when I can't hear things, if that's just,
You're talking about the
It's
Zoom
been in
feed.
and out.
Yeah, it's been very choppy.
And it's
so.
like a regular Zoom meeting. It depends on people's microphones, how close they are to the microphone.
makes sense.
Excuse me.
right, I think we're ready.
All set to go. Wesley Fliss, Whitman and Bingham Associates. We were in front of you about a month ago with a proposal for 711 Mass Ave for the 8 units on that site. Last week, we received a letter from Graves Engineering for their peer review. Majority of the issues are drainage related. We don't have an issue with any of the issues that they brought up with the drainage. We are going to update our analysis or plans to address those issues. The one item that we see as non-drainage related was the site distance item that Mr. Walsh wants more information on. And so we have started the field work to do that work, but we do not have that completed obviously at this time. I know we need to submit any updates to plans or any additional information a week prior to the meeting. So obviously, since we received the letter last week, we didn't have enough time to update the plans or any of that. So basically tonight we'll ask for a continuation for, I think we'll ask for a month out. We would look for that July 26th meeting is what we would ask for a continuation to, so we can go back and forth with Mr. Walsh, so we can have a final letter from him saying that he's satisfied with all the comments that he had and any changes that we need to make to the plan to take care of his issues. But I would ask if the board has any questions that maybe in relation to Mr. Walsh's letter or anything else that might have come up. In the meantime, you can try answering those questions or at least write them down, and then we can hopefully have those addressed also before the next meeting.
Okay. Does any member of the board have any issues relative to this that hasn't been covered by Mr. Walsh already?
I do have a question.
Sure.
The suggestion by Mr. Walsh was that there be a traffic analysis? Was that it?
No, it was I don't remember seeing a traffic.
Elevation
It was a site distance, really, it was a site distance analysis. It is item number 1, and I believe under number 24 had to do with just make sure that we know that we need to file with Mass DOT, which we know we do for the site entrance there.
I would also mention that this is right across the street from Bonjour, which is a daycare, and it also is the intersection with 2A and Chestnut Street.
Yep.
So I'm not sure is an intersection analysis would be prudent, but I mean, there are a lot of ins and outs in very close proximity to this proposed.
Yep, and so that's why we looked at obviously the distance between the intersection of Chestnut and this. We are, a couple hundred feet down from there. There's the piece of property that basically separates Chestnut Street intersection with this piece of property. I know Mr. Walsh brought up that maybe we look at moving the driveway down to the west to see if we can address some of the site distance requirements with that also, which may take care of some of that concern in regards to the intersection of Chestnut Street. And so, like I said, we've started doing some of the field work out there until we're able to plot that up and see where the best. We're going to take a look at if we could do something with the 2 turns there and maybe do some brush clearing and some work there and keep the entrance where it is, or if we need to move the entrance further to the west to make that work. Looking to the west, the site entrance, site distance isn't an issue. It's looking to the east where that issue is, and I think it's fairly obvious if you look at it how it's elevations and the curves and so forth kind of work there, and especially when it's grown in fairly well. So when we looked at it in the winter, obviously it's not as much of an issue, but currently there is substantial growth there.
Yeah, that's certainly a busy intersection, and vehicles that are eastbound on Massachusetts Avenue will stop at the corner to take the left onto Chestnut.
Correct, yep.
And the visibility isn't great, so a vehicle can be stopped and you come around that corner and.
Correct, yep. Yeah, and that's why we're going to take.
Pretty hard.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it and see. Like I said, it might be a matter of growth and seeing if we do a little bit of something with the shoulder there. But yes, we'll take a look at that and respond back to Mr. Walsh. And we have to move the entrance. We'll move the entrance a little bit further to the west.
Unfortunately, the growth is on the other side of the street that you'd be.
It is, and that's where we have to have a dialogue with Mass Highway. It's too bad it's not under the local jurisdiction, because at least we could at that point have a conversation with the DPW director and it'd be a little quicker of a conversation.
Within weeks, maybe.
Correct.
Instead of.
Correct. It could be, and I'm not sure exactly how quickly we get a response back from Mass Highway, so.
The only comment that I had was that this parcel is in the watershed protection district.
In the zone 3, right, yeah.
Yeah. And so there is language built into the bylaw regarding disturbed area.
I think it's impervious surface. We need to be under 15% impervious. And so we're at 11.7% is what we are at for amount of impervious surface.
Okay.
So
That's one of the
that's where we are.
issues, but there's actually language, I believe it's at the bottom of the section, and Adam could probably pull it up for us so you have the specific language, but there was recently another project that we did site plan approval on Massachusetts Avenue, and it was in the watershed protection district, and there's language built into that bylaw that controls the amount of disturbed area you can have through the development process. So it's just, not something that we're looking for answers for tonight, but just to bring awareness to it so that as you prepare for the next meeting,
Yep.
it's something that you can.
And so we had looked at this before.
254.9E.
254.9.
6, natural vegetation. No more than 30% of existing natural vegetation on any lot may be disturbed in an underlying residential district, nor, I think it's supposed to say no, nor more than 50% of existing natural vegetation on any lot may be disturbed in an underlying non-residential district.
Yep. So I'll take a look. I'll get the answer back to you. I know obviously we are in the riverfront buffer zone, stuff like that, so I'll get that number back to you.
Yep.
And we'll.
I'm just trying to
Yep.
give you as much of our feedback as possible this evening. That way, when you come back, it's.
Yeah, easy enough. Yep. I appreciate that. Yeah. That's what. Yeah. Obviously, we don't want to keep coming back to you and getting surprises, I guess, from that standpoint. So, thank you.
Anything else relative to 711 Massachusetts Ave? So we will continue the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
To the 26th, was it?
Yeah, if we could get to the 26th, just to make sure we have enough time to go back and forth with Mr. Walsh with those items.
I move that we continue the public hearing for 711 Mass Ave to the 26th at 6:30.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to minutes approval. Has everyone?
Skip the decisions.
Oh, sorry. Moving on to the decisions. So we have two decisions that have been drafted. The first being 150 Holman Street. And this is a stormwater permit for that parcel.
The only comment that I have is on condition number 7. It talks about detailing all maintenance performed, but if you read the operation and maintenance manual, it also talks about the need to inspect the water quality swale monthly for the first few months and twice a year thereafter. I'd like a copy of those inspection reports in addition to the maintenance reports.
Okay.
So, well, would the inspection count as, I would have inferred the inspection as part of the maintenance. If you'd like it specifically called out, we can do that.
I think that it, I guess I
All
I
inspections
defer to
and
you
maintenance
guys, but-
performed in the previous 12 months?
Yeah, I would like
Okay.
inspections and maintenance. Because if they look at it and it doesn't need anything, I just want a record of that.
Yeah, I maintained it, but if nobody goes out to inspect it, there's nothing.
There's no proof that it was done right.
Exactly.
Right.
Fair enough? Okay.
Because it talks about a site maintenance log will be kept. So I
And
want
that's going to
that.
be the same for the other one then as
Yeah,
well.
I want that, but I also want the inspection log.
So, which one's on the Powell, on the,
That's this one we're
okay,
looking at now.
so which one, so there's 7 comments. And
I was
which ones are not regular, somewhat standard? I mean, because we've got 7 comments on this one, and then we've got a lot more on the other one, because it was site plan as well, but we were talking about coming up with general.
Well, there's a copy of that in your packet as well.
Okay.
These are all standard.
Okay.
And, I mean, honestly, even the last one is intended to become standard on all stormwater, or on anything that has stormwater.
So this one before us now? This is just stormwater, the second one?
Yes, but what I'm saying is, even site plans, you'll probably be including number 7 on, even if they aren't doing a stormwater permit, because
Oh,
they're still.
definitely, yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're, all 7 of those are on the list of, or similar to the list of standard that I had prepared.
Yep.
And just for clarification, we're looking at 150 Holman, which is only the
Correct.
stormwater.
That's correct.
So do we want,
The next one is stormwater and site plan.
Correct, and the next one, only the special conditions would be stuff that's not standard, or isn't on the list of standards.
Okay.
so is there a point at which this gets inspected for completion, construction completion, and then there's a sign-off on it's been completed?
We do ask Mr. Walsh to inspect the installation of drainage systems, more so with catch basins and piping and underground detention, because that, once that kind of gets out of sight, it's hard to tell if it's done right.
Okay, so,
We certainly can, and we do take a tri-party account, and we don't release it until the project is complete. So we could ask him to do an inspection on these as they're being installed.
I think my question is more towards vegetation of basins. We don't have anything in here that standardizes or requires that the vegetation has successfully taken root and is going to perform as required for such uses?
Right, that the slope has been stabilized, is what you're.
Right, I mean, and that there's a percentage of, you know, whatever, I mean, there's no trees specifically, but, I mean, a lot of times,
No, but I mean, hydro seed takes, or it doesn't take, and if it doesn't, then
exactly, like
it
we,
needs to be redone.
like we specify that so many trees shall survive when we do the solar fields.
Yeah, I don't know that we can go back and change that now, because that wasn't part of the original motion.
Right, no, I mean, moving.
But that's something that when we get into the standard conditions later, I don't think that would be an inappropriate thing to have in there. I think there's obviously context to that, in that if you finish your project in August, you're
Right. It's a
probably
seasonal-
not gonna stabilize
it's a seasonal thing.
until, yeah,
Yeah.
until it's, you know,
And
not
honestly,
100
that should be in the
degrees out.
operations and maintenance of the O&M of the application.
And maybe it doesn't become a condition, and maybe it's something the board looks to have people ensure that they include in operation. I guess that's a conversation for the board to have, that,
I would, yeah, and I have a couple comments on that when we get to that. I do think we should have a sign off about slope being stabilized and inspections, and I think we should have a sign off on a stormwater permit.
Any other comments relative to 150 Holman Street? So Paula, you just want,
Inspection
Those
and, yeah,
inspection
detailing
reports.
all inspection and maintenance performed, all inspections and maintenance performed.
okay, so if we could just clarify that.
And
This-
and it should say stormwater inspections and maintenance shall be completed, and it shouldn't necessarily be annual. It should be as per the operation and maintenance plan, because if you go through the operation and maintenance plan, some are monthly, the swale is once a year, so depending on, the pea stone filter is inspected every 6 months.
but we're asking for the report annually.
Right, but that's not what this says. It says stormwater maintenance shall be completed annually per the operation and maintenance plan. That's not correct.
I think
So
what Adam's trying to say is that you submit the data annually, but you follow the
And it
operation. and
Should be
maintenance.
but
completed
it sh-
annually per the operation and maintenance plan.
but
If the
no.
operation and maintenance plan is
Submitted.
laid out in a
Instead of
No.
completed,
4-month
submitted.
here, 3-month there.
Okay, hold on. It should say, stormwater maintenance shall be completed in accordance with the operation and maintenance plan, Appendix A attached.
That's fine.
Completed stormwater inspection and maintenance reports detailing all inspections and maintenance performed the previous 12 months shall be provided to the board annually by July 1st.
Yes.
That's how it should read, because the maintenance is not annually, the reports are annual.
Okay, all right. So we're on the same
That's fine,
page.
yeah.
Okay,
So I'll correct that in both of those, and I'll need you guys to come in and sign them.
okay. Any other questions or comments on these conditions? So we already voted to approve it.
Yeah, these
so at
are,
this
yeah,
point,
so
we
this would have just
need
been
to
signing these.
Wordsmith
Correct.
that.
Can I just ask a general question? I see a lot of decisions in other towns that I work in, and it's unusual to see the discussion as part of the decision. Is that something that's historically been done, or is that?
I've actually trimmed our decisions down quite a bit. They used to be like 5 documents, and they used to be 18 or 20 pages.
Okay.
And the discussion has historically been included, and I suspect, and this is speculation on my part, that at some point, someone said, well, they talked about that at the meeting, and you need to be able to enforce it. And so they started including that stuff in the decision. I agree, generally, that stuff wouldn't be in there. There would be a much shorter procedural history of, this is the project as described.
Yeah.
When I first got here, I wrote a couple of decisions like that, and I was told that I was doing it wrong, and that I needed to
Okay.
go back and write the decisions the right way, the way that Lunenburg writes them. So, I mean, I'm happy to revisit decisions and how you folks want them written.
Okay.
But that's why it's been that way.
Okay, I was
All right.
just curious.
Well, and I think a lot of that would be resolved just by having our standard conditions and
Thank you, Jeff.
streamlining that part of things so there's just clear communication on what the intent is.
And I think that my experience over the past 20 or so years is that everything that gets said in here, whether it's something the board ultimately decides is part of the decision or is a condition or should be required, if someone was here and heard it, they've decided that the board talked about it, and so it's part of the final decision. And so sometimes it's just a clarification thing.
So reference the minutes of the public hearing would suffice for 5 pages?
Yeah, I mean, you don't even need to reference them because they're incorporated by the fact that that's where it happened.
It's in writing on the decision, a
But-
reference to the minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've always thought it was a great waste of space.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm used to decisions being like 2 pages.
Yeah,
Maybe 3 if there's a lot of conditions and you have to put the appellate language on there at the bottom. You just kind of space everything a little bit so it all fits.
so I think the sentence that you have, if you look at page 2 of the permit for Chase Road, a planning board public hearing after proper notice was given was held on March 22nd, continued to April 27th, continued to May 10th, continued to and closed on June 14th. If anyone wants to hear what happened, they can go back to those minutes.
Yeah. Or watch the video.
Right, exactly. I don't think we need to put all this in here.
Yeah.
We can talk about that in our workshop.
Yes.
Any other concerns about the conditions relative to the stormwater permit and site plan approval for?
Same issue with special condition 5 that we just talked about on 150
Yeah, so
Holman Street.
it's
Yeah.
this, it was a cut and paste condition, so we'll
Yeah.
just go back and change the same thing on both of them.
Yeah.
And that appendix is, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so a lot of these are monthly, so I just wanted to
Any other comments? So Adam, you will,
I'll be out the rest of the week, but I'll give Marjorie that language and I'll have her draft you all in to sign it when it's ready.
okay. All right. Now moving on to minutes for June 14th. And we have meeting minutes and then the two special
I,
hearings.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes of June 14th, 2021, and the minutes of 6/14/2021 for 757 Chase Road, and the public hearing minutes for June 14th, 2021 for 150 Holman Street.
Okay.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
And I for myself. All right.
Mr.
So-
Chair, I think if we could do the director's items next, I believe the prospective member of the Open Space Committee is here, and rather than have him sit through our lengthy discussion on stormwater conditions, it might be nice to let him get home.
Certainly. Please introduce yourself.
So while he makes his way up, I'll just let you know that you all have in your packet, Lynn Mann has resigned from the Open Space Committee due to a number of commitments that didn't allow her to focus her time the way that she had hoped. And here tonight is Mr. Eric Hines, who has stepped forward and offered to fill the position.
Yeah, good evening. Eric Hines, I live at 727 West Street in Lunenburg. My neighbor is Dave Prokofiev. Sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation of your last name, Dave. David kind of suggested to me that the Open Space Committee might be a good fit for me, and vice versa. Introduced me to Brandon Kibbe, who also thought I could be a good fit. I'm interested in serving. Don't have a lot of experience working in local government, but Brandon assures me that interest, energy, and motivation will be good enough to start at least. So I thought I'd come tonight and speak to you guys quickly and see if anybody has any questions for me.
Super, no minimum requirements.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
A pulse.
Well, there's that.
Willing to serve, I believe, is a major requirement.
Mr. Chair, I will just point out that Eric worked with Dave Prokofiev on the Pleasant Street and West Street presentations and has been in attendance at the open space meeting, and we are thrilled that he has come forward.
Excellent. Well, we certainly appreciate your interest in participating. Does anybody have any questions for Eric?
You available to meet regularly?
Yes, I am.
Okay, for however long it takes?
Yes, yeah.
Site walks?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I enjoy sidewalks.
I would like to make a motion that we appoint Eric Hines to the Open Space Subcommittee.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I might also ask that you guys accept the resignation, just to clear the deck.
Okay.
With motion and second. I move that we accept the resignation of Lynn Mann from the Open Space Subcommittee.
And I will second that and just note that Lynn was great to work with, and I wish her well in the future.
Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And I believe you need to go to the town clerk and get sworn at.
Okay.
Next chance you have. She's right downstairs, and she's here till 6 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if it's easier to come after work.
Yeah,
It's,
that'll work. Thank you.
You're
And thank
welcome.
you for moving this up. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. So circling back to committee reports, TCP, BDC.
Don't think we've met since the last time we met. Adam, would you concur with that? I don't think we have.
I lost track of them after town meeting.
Wait a minute, no, we did. We met in the Ritter last week.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought
We met in the
you
Ritter last
guys
week.
had a meeting scheduled.
We did meet. Wow. I'm drawing a blank.
Were you settling the scope of the additional monies from town meeting? Because I think that was the first time you guys had met since town meeting.
Yeah, we kind of got sidetracked with, I mean, I'm still a little bit confused with our current charge, honestly. I mean, it seems like we're supposed to spend some more money and directing them on a new build, but basically with the same, basically rebuilding what's there with a second floor, potentially a third floor, and there was a discussion about parking and whatnot. So I left that meeting somewhat confused about our current charge. To be perfectly honest, and that's on a personal level.
So, just coming from my experience serving on that committee, the committee was originally formed by the Board of Selectmen, if I recall correctly. And it was,
I believe the selectmen did create it, but it was by charter. And I think what the intent was is if there's a new building, charter requires a building committee. And the select board at the time felt that creating the committee to guide the design according to the charter made the most sense, because that way they could just continue through any construction.
but the article that approved the spending, the language was specifically written to renovate TC Passios. And then at this year's town meeting, another article was passed to modify that and include the demolition and the construction of a new building. But I guess it would be in the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen to determine whether they need to go back and modify the charge.
Well, I think the modification was, instead of reuse of the building, it was reuse of the building and/or the land.
Yep.
So that allowed it to consider it a tear down.
Yep.
But, I mean, you know, and not, again, not speaking for the committee, I just see us spending money on studies. I don't think that there's a clear scope. I mean, we're paying architects and engineers more money to come up with another calculated number for a cost of a building that is fictitious, that we haven't done any design. We're going to use the current, what the previous committee came up with for space needs. And we're not going to rehash that. So that was another takeaway from that meeting, is we're not going to go back and look at adding pieces that were taken out.
Yeah. Well, hopefully some of our master planning process will shed some light on some of the facilities issues. They certainly are a huge part of the way the town functions. It's a huge part of the budget, and so hopefully we can use this information wisely and make some good decisions. AgCom.
Mr. Chairman, before we move off of that, you just mentioned master planning, and I'm just curious, has that gone out?
It has not. It's going to go out in the July 5th Central Register.
Okay. Thank you.
So AgCom, we had our opportunity to meet in person for the first time in over a year, and there was only 2 of us showed up. So we didn't have a meeting due to lack of quorum. However, I will add that the farmer's market has been going on for 2 Sundays now so far. Our vendors last weekend were 19, and the turnout was increasingly better. Unfortunately, we didn't do so well on Father's Day weekend. And I would also like to mention to anybody that may be watching that the market will not be held this coming Sunday on July 4th.
All right. Stormwater Task Force.
We have not met. When is our meeting scheduled?
Our meeting is going to be July 8th. That was what everybody said worked for them.
And Open Space.
Open Space met on Tuesday, the 15th, at the Ritter Memorial Building. We had a number of residents in attendance. So Brandon Kibbe, as you may recall, I had mentioned to the board at our last meeting that 225 Pleasant Street and 671 West Street, Mr. Hines and Mr. Prokofiew had presented a presentation to the open space about preserving that land. The next step was for Brandon to go to the Board of Selectmen to see if we could pursue additional uses for that property. And we were given the green light to reach out to all departments to try to get feedback from them on their interest and potential uses of that property. And Mr. Allison, I did stress that we need to include the agricultural committee. So the item on our agenda that generated all of the interest was, as I've mentioned to all of you, we are in the process of going through all of the parcels that are listed as general municipal. And some of those properties are on Lake Shirley. There were a number of Lake Shirley residents in attendance who are adamant that public access should not be pursued on Lake Shirley. It's the understanding of our committee that based on the gifting of the dam to the town, along with that came the requirement for public access as part of the grant that was received from the state. So we are in the process of trying to obtain a copy of the vote of the town at the town meeting, as well as a copy of the grant. At this point, there were a combination of three properties that were being looked at and another combination of three properties. And at this point, all the open space committee is looking at is potentially not a boat ramp, not just to look to see if it's feasible, but what we've been talking about with the parcels that we're looking at is potentially a canoe portage. But lots more investigation to go. We did hear the concerns of the residents and will continue to investigate the history of the parcels. And as Brandon stressed, this is a public process and nothing can be done without town meeting approval. So that is we did receive a petition from a number of residents opposing any public access on Lake Shirley. So we advise them that we will continue to investigate and work with all departments once ownership is still cloudy. So there's the parcel that particularly interests the commission is on 0 Lake Shirley Reservoir. And it's a small parcel, but could potentially house a couple of cars, picnic tables, and a canoe portage and provide access. It is the parcel that was gifted to the town as affectionately known as Stump Cove. So it really couldn't be used for anything other than canoes. But continuing to look at all parcels, but we've kind of zeroed in on parcels that we think make sense. And then parcels that are still in general municipal land, one member is looking into the process for land of low value to get it put back on the tax rolls rather than just being listed as general municipal and generating no revenue. So, and that's really it.
I have a question about specifically 225 Pleasant Street.
Yep.
I went out there the other day. There's a 77-foot frontage on Pleasant Street at the corner. And it looks like there's been some recent excavation. There's an existing, looks like 18 or 24-inch corrugated pipe outfall. And then there's been a considerable trench dug seemingly along the property line.
I recall, and you'd want to research with DPW, but I recall an issue with drainage and
Has to do with
storm water coming off.
Has to do with
the road.
Steve Walker and his property there. He's the property on the corner, the large house to the right on the solar field side of the bend. Ooh, I can do this.
Oh, now we can share it to the screen. But Adam, you probably know better than I do. I just recalled that.
Yeah, there was an issue with the way, so I believe it's this house here. And there was an issue with the town's right-of-way. They did some work in here to get access, and it was causing water to shed across. So the DPW is working to limit that. Is it not that?
I don't know. I'm not, as a resident on the top of Flat Hill Road, I'm not a big fan of DPW and drainage right now.
But it's to resolve an issue with our property that was sheeting water onto his property.
Oh, similar to Flat Hill sheeting water onto the raisin, yeah. I'm just curious, because it looked like it was in the access, and I didn't want to have however many acres parcel with that little frontage being impacted because DPW thought it would be a good place for a trench. It turns into wetlands and you can't drive into it. It's really kind of a no-brainer. But
No, I think it's pushing the water away from the access strip out into the field. At least that was my recollection. I haven't been involved in it, but I do remember
Well, if
a
anybody had
discussion
any
about that.
survey instruments or GPS units, they could actually locate stuff, but just go out and dig a trench. I don't know. It may have been located, I don't know.
I will definitely advise the Open Space Committee, because we may
Excellent.
want to look at it so that we
Thank
don't end
you.
up with a wet issue
Yep.
for access.
Because that is the only access.
Yeah.
Capital Planning Committee.
Is that me?
Yeah.
No, okay.
we're out of
I'm
season,
looking
so-
at Matt. Yeah,
don't
no-
wanna be
no
on the
meeting.
economic
No
development?
No meeting.
And Economic Development Committee.
I was not able to attend. Adam can probably let you know.
We discussed a survey of the business community. Members had submitted questions. I sort of coordinated them into a draft survey with some comment and suggestion. The members present went through that and sort of nailed it down. I'm going to write an opening statement for them, send it back, and we'll be meeting on the 22nd of July to discuss it again.
As per my usual lengthy discussion, I did submit a ton of questions, but I just can't find enough nights to do it. So hoping someone else will.
I have a question about the agenda for that. All it has is your name on it. Why doesn't?
Does it?
Why doesn't it have? the
I don't
members?
know. I put it together at the last
Okay.
minute.
Okay. I was hoping it would look, because
It certainly can have their names on it. If it did, it was I have to make sure I submit this before.
that's fine. I do, it's just something I noticed.
Yeah.
What stood out.
Okay. MRPC.
Well, is there anyone who's interested in economic development? Maybe we can put that on our July 12th meeting.
I mean, what is the commitment for it?
Right now, they're meeting monthly
Okay?
to sort of get things going. I can't say if it will go more or less than monthly. I would expect that once they really get into the swing of things, it would probably be like a quarterly or every other month sort of meeting. But
See, I would think it would double.
Yeah, I was going the other.
I
You think it's gonna go
I
every
think
2
it's-
weeks?
Yeah, I think
It's
it's gonna go to.
overdue.
I think it's gonna go to every couple weeks, because there's a lot to be done, and that's one of the reasons. We're talking about meeting with business owners, talking about, putting together surveys, talking about having charrettes, and so I think it's gonna get to be more than once a month, or certainly more than quarterly.
Is it evenings?
yes, I think our next one they is for 6 o'clock on the 22nd.
I am potentially interested, and certainly wouldn't want to take it from someone who's more than potentially interested, but I can chat with my wife and see about how much more commitment I'm allowed.
Exactly. So can we put that on the agenda for the
Yep.
12th?
If you're watching at home, I love you.
MRPC.
Well, y'all missed, not that you were supposed to be there, but it was quite the exciting MRPC meeting, by which I mean June is the annual budget meeting. So if you are into sitting and listening to spreadsheets being read out loud, followed by people justifying raises for people that clearly deserve it, but they need to give very long explanations of why, so it's on the record. This was the meeting for you. Nothing directly applicable to Lunenburg, but we passed all budget things.
Excellent. And MJTC.
Has not met since the last time I was here. Meeting coming up on the 14th. Oh, MRPC, the regular meeting has been moved from July 1st to July 15th. MJTC, just putting it on the radar, I realize that depending how those meetings end up running and how often I need to be in person and my wife's schedule could be a problem for me once the school year starts, putting that out there, but that is could be, I'm not saying I can't, I just,
Okay.
What night is that?
oh, that's the trick, it's 2:30 in the or 3 o'clock, it's like 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah, exactly. And if it was.
That's the trick for everybody.
I probably have it better than most. If I have to be in person while getting my kids off the bus, that could be more challenging. But I will let us know if and when that happens.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our workshop. Stormwater reporting and permit process, as well as standard conditions for our board decisions, which we aired a little bit of this out as part of the 2 projects we were looking at earlier this evening.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a quick on the stormwater. I don't have a lot. I got those documents from you. I can't print them here. I don't have access to this printer.
Okay.
And it was like 5 o'clock when I saw them land, so.
Okay.
I was waiting for that to really do anything more on the application, so that one we maybe need to put a pin in. As far as reporting, it really just needs to be an Excel table at this point with links to the documents on the server for each individual property, because it's just ensuring that they're landing and then comparing their report to their individual O&M plan.
Yep.
So I spoke with the conservation administrator and said, this is what we're doing. He said, oh, we don't do that. We don't require the reports very often, but when we do, I'll remember that July 1st is the date. I expect the first couple of years are going to be a lot of letters going out reminding people that they owe us stuff. And then from there, we'll see how we have to approach it as time goes on.
Okay.
So I think I missed some discussion on this because I wasn't at the last meeting, because it was at one of the webinars.
Yep.
How do we prevent this from becoming completely unmanageable in terms of, okay, now we have, I mean, I'm looking at the rate of development, great, now we have a few hundred reports coming in. Are we actually going to read them? And because they need to be reviewed, because if they're not being reviewed, people are going to fill out anything, and then the stormwater isn't being taken care of long-term. Do we have a strategy for this in place, or is this just we're pitching it down the field and hoping, which I can understand why sometimes that's a strategy, but.
Well, and the reason we decided to have a workshop on it is because in the last year or so, we've had more of these projects come through with the stormwater permits, and now we're looking to really standardize the process and create a standard for everybody to follow so that it is easier to follow along, do inspections, and ensure compliance. One question I had, and I think I know the answer, but in most of our decisions, one of our standard conditions is that the project shall comply and be built according to the plans. That's boilerplate. Would we be able to take our conditions and requirements and provide them to the engineers and say, this is our standard process? I know we cannot compel them to put them into their plans, but from my point of view, if we have a standard way of addressing things, then if we shared that with the engineer, it makes it a lot easier to just go back and reference one thing and say, these are the plans, and look, the last page has all the standard conditions all laid out just like detailed notes.
I'm not a fan of that.
Okay.
It's fine if you want to ask them to do that, but if we lay out these standard conditions,
Yep.
and every decision, you say we're going to attach our standard conditions, and this document exists, and I mean, if the board says, yes, we like these, we like the wording, this is our standard condition, you vote to approve it, we're gonna send this to everybody that we work with and say, get ready, this is what, all of your decisions are gonna have this in it.
Yep.
And then, like with North End, the special conditions will address things about the plan that the board specifically wants to address. And, I mean, whether this is in the plan or it's in the decision, it's gonna hold the same level of weight. And if they know what it is, they know what it is. I mean, none of this is crazy stuff, and I'm sure it's pretty similar to what a lot of communities put in most decisions.
The only reason I asked about putting it in the set of plans is I feel like a lot of times with construction, the plans go out and everybody seems to see the plans because they can't build anything without a set of plans. But our actual decision never sees the light of day. If you're the contractor doing the dirt work or the utility connection or the foundation, you have no clue that the planning board said that the hours of operation shall be from 7:30 a.m.
That's one of the things I want to include. And I, unfortunately, didn't send it to Adam until later tonight, but I had mentioned at the last meeting that Tingsboro has a lengthy list of conditions. Their Conservation Commission is the Stormwater Authority. So it's a little bit different, and there's things that I don't think are applicable, but that is one of the conditions that they include. This document, as well as the submitted plans, shall be included in all construction contracts and subcontracts dealing with plans, shall be on-site upon commencement and during any site work for contractors to view and agree to.
I think that's a good one, yeah.
So, you know,
So
I
whichever
agree with you.
vehicle we choose to implement, I think the important thing is that everybody knows
Is aware
what's
of them,
going
yeah.
on. And has that understanding right from the get-go. The other thing that came to my mind is that I think it may be worthwhile to at least consider a joint meeting with the Conservation Commission, specifically regarding these type of issues, because there's a tremendous amount of overlap between the site plan approval process and the conservation process. And it would be a lot easier for the applicants if our decisions followed the same process, like we had the same reporting process for the detention basins and so on. I know that with a few of these projects, conservation has put language into their order of conditions. And if they're gonna be doing those type of activities, I think it only makes sense that all of this kind of follows the same path, not that they're asking for annual reports on January 1 and we're asking for annual reports on July 1 and
Yeah.
and
Right.
so on. It'll make it more difficult for the town and the property owner. So I don't know if anybody else has any feelings on having a joint meeting with Concom, but,
I think we should have more conversations between groups.
I do too.
Yes.
okay. So,
Are you guys open to some feedback?
certainly,
I don't want to give it now because my job for the Cape Cod Commission, where I spent 25 odd years in Watertown, was doing planning enforcement with the zoning enforcement officer. So I stumbled over every issue you're talking about. And at the commission, we had a staff of 40. And we were dealing with everything from subdivisions to the airport. So we had people who could actually go out in the field and waggle their finger at whoever was the nasty party and say, you gotta fix that. At Watertown, we had a plumbing inspector, wiring, gas fitting, and 2 zoning enforcement officers, as well as an assistant building commissioner and a chief building commissioner. So even for a city, although it was only 4 square miles, their enforcement staff was also pretty robust. I think the struggle that you're gonna have in Lunenburg is you don't have a lot of bodies. I think the 2 things I'd say is Standard conditions are great. Implementing conditions are great. And putting stuff in decisions that if in the future you find some sort of issue, problem, whatever it is. And I'm more thinking unintended ignorance on one end of the spectrum and bald-faced lack of compliance. You know, screw you, I'm just going to do what I want. The condition, if you include it, or the plan or whatever, is going to give you that leverage to ultimately have it corrected. And I know that you have other leverage, but it helps because it reminds you which of the 6 or 7 editions it was that was the one that had the stuff in it that was significant to the approval. And it also, as Member Bertram read, and I'm not saying you should adopt Tingsboro, it puts them on notice that they should have had it, and it ain't your job to make sure, other than to send them a copy. So I'll give you some feedback through Adam, through a letter, that might help with both natural resources and stormwater conditions and general permitting conditions that are things that you could put into the thought machine and see if they'll help you make the decisions not only stronger, but better, that will get you more bang for your buck, less time grinding somebody's wheels on the applicant side, and less time grinding either Matt Morrow or his successor or Adam Burney or your zoning officer's wheels or whoever in the follow-up side. You know, you go to the site and your heart's pounding because you're like, I hope it's okay. I don't want there to be a problem. And then, you know, so thanks for letting me once again butt in. I wish I still lived in Lunenburg because I volunteer for the board and a couple of the committees. I don't know if you can have more than the number of members that you have, but I'll try and give you some things to think about.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I do have, I forwarded Tingsboro to Adam. I also would like to forward, Hudson has some standard conditions.
Sure.
And if Miss Adams wants to send some as well. Because I think we do need to make them a little bit more robust than we have.
And I mean, to Mr. Brenner's point, I don't know that there's a methodology that isn't requiring someone to hire a PE to stamp their annual report, that the inspections and maintenance were done per the O&M, that doesn't involve someone reading through them and ensuring that they were completed per what was required. I mean, I guess theoretically there's some automated document reader that one could put together, but I'm not that technologically savvy.
Are we requiring that they get a PE to stamp it?
We're not.
I just hate to put more burden on the town government, and again, there may not be a great solution, but I kind of look at it from the perspective of we're seeing a lot of land that's getting developed. We have to consider this because there's a lot of land getting developed that isn't as easily developable as land might have been in the past. Mm-hmm. I don't like putting the extra burden on the town government that already has a lot going on. And that makes it more likely for things to fall through the cracks. That makes it more likely that, be it stormwater or anything else, it creates a problem, possibly a significant one down the road. If we're saying that we can get a PE to stamp it and that would take care of it, I don't necessarily feel bad putting that on the future owners, that they would have to do that, because that's kind of the cost of doing business now.
If that's the direction that the board would like to go, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I think that there would probably be some pushback. Again, I don't know what an engineer would charge to do the inspections and to provide documentation of said inspections with their stamp and signature. I imagine it would be at least 4 figures, if not 5, depending on what it is.
Be like a Title V inspection, basically.
That's
A few $100.
Yeah, it's a few $100.
The, I guess the challenge I have with it is I feel like from a compliance standpoint, if you're gonna have a stormwater permit process or a site plan approval process or building code, then the burden of, enforcing that code, whatever it is, typically sits with the municipality. You don't submit data to the police department that says, I didn't speed this past year, right? And I hate to see applicants burdened with going out and finding an engineer and doing all this type of stuff, because those type of inspections are certainly not gonna be on the top of
No, and I mean,
the
in
list of projects to do.
in
And
years, that's
so-
going to be, engineers are going to be like, woohoo!
Oh, I got something to
A
do
year like
today,
today, I mean, they're going to be like, okay, great, that
Yeah.
inspection that, when we didn't have any jobs was $500 is now 5,000 because I don't want to do it. But if
Yeah.
you're going to pay me $5,000 for it, sure.
Now,
That's my concern as well.
so we use, is it Viewpoint for the
Yeah.
building permit process? Is there any sort of compliance stuff built into that? I know it's got a process that, it gets checked off.
Yeah,
by each board.
there isn't compliance. I mean, it's really designed for permit issuance.
Yep,
And
then you
and
close it out and you're
inspection, and once it's completed, it's completed. I mean, could we do a thing where we set up an annual renewal and people are submitting the renewal of their stormwater permit through Viewpoint as the inspection or as the annual report? I mean, I guess we could. It's not what it's meant for, and it's not going to work as seamlessly as it would for issuing a permit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it doesn't mean that somebody doesn't have to go through and read them all. I think contrary to the building code or a voluntary procedure that the town puts in place, we've been required to do this by the federal government as part of our NIPD's compliance. So enforcement through the requirement of private monitoring, I guess, sort of jives with that same unfunded mandate. It all just sort of trickles downhill. So I mean, I understand both sides of it. I'm not opposed to either side, but I mean, there's pluses and minuses to both. The real meat and potatoes of it, I guess, is the Stormwater Task Force is looking at how to fund compliance with the MS4, the NIPD's permit, as part of their mandate. And that is, how do we continue doing this through the general fund? Do we set up a stormwater enterprise account? Do we do something else? Do we plant a money tree? Do we take over a small island nation? Whatever it happens to be.
Create a stormwater utility.
Well, we're not, so I always call it an enterprise fund because people hear utility and they think trucks and buildings and hundreds of people, but it's the same idea. And if we were to create something like that, that was funded through a utility fee, then the town could hire someone whose job was to manage the stormwater system and would probably be of an engineering bent and could be the person who is managing compliance with these. I think that's years or more down the road. Right now, we have 2 that we're managing, so I don't think there's a major burden on the town staff, but that doesn't mean that as time goes on, that number isn't gonna grow, and the need for, like you said, additional staff hours, making sure that this gets done and other things are also being done isn't gonna be there.
So I agree, we have to look at a long-term solution, but I will, sometime, Adam, I'll talk to you offline. I do, free of charge, I do access databases that specifically do this. So for example, conservation commissions that require stormwater vegetation plans or an inspection in accordance with their orders of conditions. Once it's entered, it will then calculate the date it's due, and then it will send a notice that another inspection is due. So I'd be happy to work with you. Looking at these tables that have been submitted, basically you need to create a relational database that will track this information and queue you when it hasn't been received, and that's what I do. So I'd be happy to work with you on creating something in the interim until we figure out a long-term solution.
But we're also not that we're not worrying about those things, we're getting an annual report of the maintenance and inspections that were done. So they're not reporting as they do them, they're submitting a once annual report.
Okay.
So, and I understand what you're saying, and that makes sense when you're tracking multiple projects with varying timelines. This is one timeline, it's July 1st every year.
So so then that makes it much easier for me because that already exists. So I can just give you that piece of a module.
Yeah, and I mean, that way, and then we just need to make sure that we're maintaining the proper database of O&M plans by address, and that's easy enough to do. I mean, we're already doing it because our server has everything broken down by street, broken down by project on that street, and then within those folders is all the information that gets submitted through here. So finding the O&M plans is easy. Tracking, did I get it on July 1st or not, is also relatively easy. Then it's making sure the two line up, which is...
But as Mr. Brenner pointed out, the key is then to go to this operation and maintenance plan, look at that report, and
That's
did
what
they...
the two lining up is the lift.
That's the key.
And with 2 permits or 5 permits, that lift is this. When you get into 100, it starts getting bigger, and that, and then there's the follow-up of the people who didn't submit it or missed something, or and so that it grows as we have more permits that we have to deal with.
Okay. Could you request a joint meeting with Conservation?
Yeah.
Second and fourth Wednesday?
Yeah, I can't do Wednesday meetings.
Okay.
So, I mean, I can ask them if they can come to our meeting. If you guys want to meet with them without me, that's great. I just don't know.
No, I was just.
Yeah, I'm
bringing it up so we kind of have an idea as.
We could also shoot for a Thursday where neither of us meet and.
Yeah.
I can't do a Thursday,
Okay.
but if it's possible, we could schedule just a workshop, and we've had workshop meetings, and the video
Yeah.
still works and everything, so
Yeah.
maybe we can do that during one of our meetings.
Yeah, I don't want them to feel like they're being summoned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
yeah.
it's just, it'd be nice to get on the same page.
Yep.
Especially when it comes to the reporting aspect of things, because I feel like for a property owner to have 2 boards asking for different things at different times would be highly confusing. So
Yeah.
that's really, it should be hopefully a pretty simple, straightforward meeting just to kind of get on the same page.
One follow-up question, if all we're tracking is the annual date, I guess I'm confused as to why the permitting software can't do that. Can you talk with them and find out if it can?
Well, I can, and I've talked with them about a variety of different things. We've done some things that the permit software isn't necessarily designed for.
Okay.
We sold beach passes on it one year with mixed success. I mean, for the most part, it worked, but it was was it pre-COVID, in 19 maybe? And it's not designed for selling beach passes, but we were able to sort of shoehorn it in. There was something else I wanted to get them to do, and it just wasn't what their program does. And they're at such a huge scale that they're not necessarily designing changes to the program to fit each of their vendor or each of the people they vend for. Again, we can do something It's just not going to be the most efficient, because it's not intended as a repository and tracking software. It's designed as a permit issuance software and an inspection software.
But I guess that's my point. If it's an inspection software, couldn't you enter, issue a stormwater permit and the inspection, and then inspections are annually, and then have it, it doesn't seem like it's outside of the realm.
The inspections are tied to the permit, and once you complete, so we put these in as, not stormwater, but a site plan. So we put a site plan in, and moving through the public hearing and the issuance of the site plan approval completes that file and
Okay.
closes it out.
Okay. And
So
there's no way to do add inspections to that?
Not after it's completed. And the
Okay.
issuance of the document is the completion of that permitting process.
So you could theoretically create a new permit.
Correct.
But then it would never end.
Or there's a renewal feature. So if you have dog licenses that you use the program for, you can make it so it's renewable on an annual basis. So we could create a stormwater report permit, and people could submit through that, and they have to renew it every year. It's not as intuitive as, and not that it can't be done or we can't make it intuitive, but it wasn't what I was thinking when I thought people are submitting reports. I'm expecting people to either mail something or just email what they have.
Right, we have
and-
to receive the report.
Yeah,
so-
and I can play around with it and see what I can set up. I just don't know if it's going to feel like what you expect it to feel like when you're submitting a report annually. But the renewal is nice because it does remind you, it sends you email reminders.
And that's, I think, what we need.
But the issue is with a Walmart, because they don't have a stormwater permit, so we'll use them. That's easy to set up an auto renew for, because you get an email address and it goes to Walmart Property Management or Brixmor or whoever. If it's 675 Fake Street, when Jim Jones buys it and you get his email and he signs up for the permit and he gets the email to renew, 5 years down the road, when someone offers him $1 million for the house because they want to live in Lunenburg,
Can't change the owner?
no, because the permit's issued to each owner, so it starts to disconnect things.
Okay.
And then you would have to.
Then you'd have to
go
find who the new owner
assessor.
is, get a new email address, and
Well, we should be tracking that anyway, though.
we should be tracking who owns it.
Well,
The
No,
assessor.
because if we
The
don't get a
assessor-
report, we're sending an email, we're sending a physical letter to the home address saying, hey, you didn't do this.
okay.
Or
Well, I
to the
guess
owner,
then-
based on the assessor's record.
Then you just need a standard operating procedure that says, okay, we didn't get a renewal on this, and then go to the assessor's database and
Yes,
say,
and
okay,
pull down
is there
the-
a new one, and then reach out to that owner. I mean,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's not a super clean cut and
Well, we
dry
wouldn't even
process.
worry about if it was a new owner or not. We would just have a standard letter of, hey, you didn't get your annual report for stormwater in, and in sending it out, we'd pull that ownership information from the assessor's office,
Yep.
which will be even easier now that they've migrated over to Vision.
Okay. So, Mrs. Bertram, you have some conditions that you've already emailed to Abby?
I sent the
The Tingsboro
Tingsboro
stuff.
Okay.
Conservation Commission's conditions, and I also would like to send the Hudson ones, but there's several in here that I think we should be including, and this is specifically, for stormwater. I just talked about having the construction contracts, having the document and the plans on site. One of the things Mr. Allison mentioned earlier is the stabilization of the slope. It talks about that. It specifically says the applicant's owners and their successors and assigned shall maintain all culverts, so there's a lot in this. And I did email it to Adam.
And I just sent it to everybody.
And this is an interesting one, and I'm curious about it, because it says, issuance of these conditions does not in any way imply or certify that this site or abutting sites will not be subject to flooding, storm damage, or any other form of damage due to witness. The burden of proof that the project did not cause or contribute to said damages shall be upon the applicant's owners, successors, and/or assigns. So wondering if we should.
That's probably a good one to include,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of times there's a belief that the installation of one of these systems prevents all damage always. And if we get a storm that's above and beyond what the design standard is,
Yeah, so there's quite a few in here that I think we should include, and rather than trying to go through them tonight, I think it makes sense to maybe, unless you want me to.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense.
Okay.
We've got them in our email.
and if you want to highlight, when you send me Hudson's, the ones from Tingsboro and Hudson that you would
Yeah,
like
so why don't I
included,
do that? Why don't I highlight, I will highlight, I'll go through, I didn't have time tonight.
That's fine.
I didn't, so, but I will highlight the ones I think make sense, and then I'll send you Hudson's too.
Okay. So we've got off to a good start.
And I mean, the other 11 conditions on the draft conditions, minus 12, which is the one that needs to be changed on the two we have, are again, fairly standard, fair sort of stuff. Build it to the plan. This is what it means. This is, the building commissioner can enter. Here's your construction hour. I mean, none of this is,
Yeah, no, it's all pretty simple and
I
straightforward.
mean, it's stuff that I would expect most people are going to say, yeah, that's what we expected.
So, I honestly, I think we should have two different documents. I think we should have, standard site plan approval, and then I think we should have standard stormwater, and there'll be stormwater permit, because there will be some overlap.
Yep.
But I don't necessarily, I think there's a lot of stormwater conditions that are very different than site plan.
Yep.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Would we lump site plan approval and special permits together, or three separate?
No, I think site plan and special permit are going to be the same for the most part.
Okay. I'm trying to think marijuana uses are a special permit process.
Yeah.
Solar is special
Solar,
permit, but they're both rolled into site plan approval.
Yeah, and they'll both get site plan approval as well, and then drive-through.
Okay.
And that is considered, I would consider that a use, so that would trigger a site plan approval as well. So, any special permit you're issuing, you're also issuing site plan along with it, so they're gonna have.
Do drive-throughs?
Yeah.
Okay. ZBA does hours of operation.
Yes. But you can do hours of operation for the drive-through, because that would be a reasonable condition attached to a permit for that use. Because it's only allowed by accessory use in the commercial zones by special permit for the planning board per the use definition.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, so we can cherry pick out what we like
Yeah.
out of Hudson and
Yeah, and
Kingsborough, incorporate
once
it with
once I
this.
get Hudson from Paula, I'll forward that around, and if anybody has things that they want to cherry pick out for any reason, just highlight them or send me a list of, I want A, C, Q, and Z.
And I think
or
Miss Adams
numbers.
said she was gonna send something as well, so.
Yeah.
Excellent. Adam, do you have any other director's items other than open space, which we already covered?
Paula got the IFB will go out in the central register on the 5th. So it'll be 30 days. So it'll be August when we start getting responses. So the timeline we spoke about before will probably stick to pretty closely to that. And, excuse me, as I was getting up to leave for the day, I saw that the site suitability request for the comprehensive permit on Howard Street came through. And it came from the applicant. It's a pretty substantial amount of information. So I haven't looked through it yet. We have not been notified by Mass Housing or any of the other subsidizing agencies that it went to them. I expect if you put the effort together to send it to me that he probably sent it to them just before or just after. So I would expect our 30-day clock is going to start real soon.
Okay, so I would like to request that we consult with town council, because I think there are several issues that, and I know you've talked with him.
And I did speak with him at the last office hours, which were, was it last Thursday? Last Wednesday, last Thursday, and I did mention about the enabling legislation, and he said he will look into that and
Okay.
see where that resides. He said it's unlikely, but it's not completely impossible.
So because we're entering into this, very tight timeline, personally, and having worked for the town for many years, previous council, years ago, had stressed to different boards that if you're entering a situation in which may become contentious, it's better to involve council at the beginning rather than at the end. So, my desire would be to have council potentially even in attendance during the hearings. They attend.
Oh, I would expect that the ZBA will have counsel in.
So-
And that's
ZBA,
six
right.
months or so or more down the line.
Okay, so what is our 30-day?
The 30-day timeline that we have right now is with the subsidizing agency for comment. So in order for them to even approach the zoning board, they need to have financing through an agency of the Commonwealth that it's recognized as a subsidized housing agency. So they submit a packet of information to their chosen agency. They review the site for suitability within Chapter 40B of Mass General Laws. And the town and any other person has the opportunity to provide any and all comment to them in the 30 days after they notify the town. And then, after the comment period closes, they go and review those comments in conjunction with the application materials submitted by the proponent and determine whether or not they find the site eligible to be financed through their agency under the comprehensive permit regulations.
Okay, so how do we, as board members, take a look at that packet, and are you going to send it to us?
Yeah,
Do
what
we
I'm probably
have
going to do is put it up on a Dropbox or something, because I got it as a zip file. And I
Okay.
don't think you all want me to send you a zip file.
Okay, so you're going to put it up and make it available to
Yes.
all of us. And will town council look at that as well?
I would expect that the town manager will ask him to look at it.
Okay,
And again, I don't want to say our comments don't matter, but they're going to have very little influence on the subsidizing agency. I won't say they have very little. They don't always have a lot of impact on whether or not they choose to provide a suitability letter.
well, one of the things that I want to understand is extension of the water line was talked about in great length at the water district. And the cost of extending that water line was estimated to be $3 million, is that correct?
Thereabouts.
$3
Sounds about right.
million. So my question would be, I would want to make sure that that $3 million cost is included in his financial report, and that doesn't get put onto the town. Now, that doesn't even take into consideration the extension of sewer. So looking at those types of things is really going to be important for us as a municipality. Because this town certainly can't take on that kind of cost. So I want to understand what he's incorporated in his financial plan. And I believe the water district will also need I want to make sure the water district has a copy and has access, because there will be costs associated from the water district side, which is a self-supporting agency. So those types of that type of financial data has to be made clear because they're going to be looking to see if it's financially viable. And I don't know what has been put into the application.
And I mean, that also could play to his profits and his value of unit, because that is limited in what the dividends are for ownership post-project. And if his costs are incredibly high, then his market rentals can support that through a higher rental cost. Because DHCD will dictate what his subsidized rental costs are.
So it's just going to be, we need to look at this really carefully. The sewer department, the water department, all have to look at this very carefully for the
I think
financial
it probably would
impacts.
make sense to put a workshop on the agenda, not specifically about this application, but just 40Bs in general. I know, Mr. Brenner, you attended that workshop, but I feel like it would be good to discuss some of these things at a meeting,
agree.
just so we have a better understanding of the process in general. I mean, a bunch of questions come to my mind, but you know, this is a complex situation, and when you start expanding municipal utilities, as Mrs. Bertram said, there's an enormous cost to it, but there's also the potential increase in development along with the extension of those utilities. And like one of the projects that we recently did site plan approval on, which is the lettuce farm going in behind Hannaford, I know one of the issues that they ran up against was Lunenburg Water District their permit doesn't have enough water left on it to supply that operation, and they were in the process of getting a new permit. So how do things like that factor into this? I mean,
Exactly.
you can't, you know,
Can't give water to a
theoretically-
project that you don't have.
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
if DEP is limited you to X amount of gallons per day, and you're already very close to that threshold, and then, you know, what's the unintended consequence? Okay, you bring a 12-inch water main all the way up Howard Street. Well, by right, anybody that's in the district is now serviced by that water line. So if Lanny Orchards wants to tie in and open up a water park or water all their crops, well, they can't because there isn't enough water on the permit, but there was enough water for somebody else. And so it's an incredibly complex situation. And, you know, I'm not sure how all that infrastructure stuff ties into the 40B application process and the suitability part of things, but if you were to pick the narrowest, windiest road in town, I'm sure Howard Street would be very close to the top of the list with the elevation changes and the trees near the edge of the road. And, you know, the potential of bringing 300 units on board, 200 in the towers and another 100 in
So
single-family homes.
How quickly do you want to get that on?
I mean,
Quickly.
yeah.
Well, I mean, it is. I understand that you probably want that prior to their application to the zoning board. Are you expecting or hoping to be able to do that prior to submitting comment for site suitability? And I ask because I think it would probably be really helpful to have counsel here to sort of walk the board through that process. I know that he has a lot of experience on both sides of comp permits, working with communities as well as private clients to get them approved. So I don't want to say let's do it on the 12th and have him say I'm booked out into August.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to say let's do it in August and find out that the board was hoping to use some of those as basis for comment.
The sooner the better to me.
Okay. And I think having counsel here is, that discussion is specifically about this application that we're looking at, but it will also inform the rest of the discussion in terms of 40B in general.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he could do either. I mean, you could ask him general questions, and I don't think it necessarily needs to be about this application only. Obviously, most of your questions are going to be driven by the facts and circumstances around this application, but they're going to be reasonably applicable to any other application that might come through town.
All right.
So it's just going to be important, if we're going to put it on for the 12th, it's going to be important that we get those documents up on Dropbox so we can all review them before the 12th.
Yeah, let me check with Adam and see what his schedule looks like.
Or what's the next date, the 26th?
Yeah. I mean, I would probably throw those two out and see if he's available for either of them, and then kind of go from there.
Okay. And just as a procedural process, he doesn't technically have any business in front of the board, but we're in receipt of the documents.
Yeah, I mean, he's counsel. It's not, I don't think it's, I mean, and I'll verify with the town manager, but I can't imagine that that would be something she would say, no, he can't do that.
Okay.
The town pays an annual fee for his services, and
Well, I just
and
don't.
this sort of thing would be covered by that.
Yeah, and I just don't want there to be any sort of perception on the part of the applicant that we're, you know,
That perception's already there,
okay.
so I wouldn't worry about.
Yep.
And I mean, you're not doing anything. You're gathering information about how the
How the
different
process works,
circumstances apply to the process. That you're well within your rights to do that. And if you have information about a potential application and questions arise about that, I mean, as long as the board isn't voting to, you know, run Mr. O'Brien out of town and absolutely deny his project, and even if you were, it doesn't matter. You
We're not the
wouldn't be the
permitting
ones who approve it
authority.
anyway.
We're not the permitting authority.
All right. Anything else, Adam?
No.
All right. Moving on to meeting schedule. All meetings are at Town Hall again.
Correct.
6:30 PM. And we have July 12th, which will be the scenic road hearing for 360 Flat Hill Road.
And 101 Pleasant.
And 101 Pleasant. And then July 26th, which I believe will include 711 Massachusetts Ave. Any ongoing items? I think that
No, we talked about continuing this conditions and special stormwater workshop. Do you want to continue that to the 12th, or do you want to continue it to the 26th?
Let's put it on for the 12th, and we can always kick it down the road. The priority would certainly be the meeting with town
Well, yeah,
council.
yes.
So, any public comment? I don't
No.
think we have any members of the public. All right. Any board comment or concerns? All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Second. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
No one's allowed to leave. You have a lot of stuff to sign.
We adjourned at 9:02.
The